Hey there, I'm Joey Santos, the online pastor here at Christ Church. Welcome to CC Life Plus. Thank you so much for checking us out. Listen, you probably saw a lot of content here, right? For kids, adults, music, podcast. That's why we created this for you. So listen, go ahead, fill out this form right here because we created this with you in mind so we can connect. It's all about engagement. So we want to talk with you. We want to engage with you. We want to discover about new ways that we can grow together in Christ through technology.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. You're holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Well, hey, good morning, Church at the Bar. Brad Wilson here. Good to be with you today. And we're moving through this reset series. And today, we're going to talk about purpose and resetting purpose. And before we really get into the nuts and bolts of today's message, I want to start in talking about questions. Because questions are very interesting. And when you think about you and your life and maybe your family or maybe your friends, maybe where you work, there are certain questions that we ask or that we get asked in life that makes sense. And then there are some questions that we get asked, or maybe we're the one that asks the questions, that after we ask it, we think, why did I ask that question? Or after we hear the question, we think, why is that person asking me that question? And the questions that exist or that are common in your house, or maybe where you work, or maybe with the people you spend a lot of time with, it varies from group to group, from home to home, from workplace to workplace. But questions are a part of all of our lives. And we know that with certain questions, there are certain questions that you'll ask your kids that you wouldn't ask your spouse, or you wouldn't ask your boyfriend, or you wouldn't ask your boss, or you wouldn't ask your parents. They're just, some questions are unique to the relationship and the situation. Now, in my house, one of my favorite questions to ask of the three boys is the question, what are you doing? And depending on how I ask that, in the tone, how quickly I ask the question, how long I drag that question out, or the circumstance in which that question is asked, I can get a variety of answers. Sometimes that question brings on panic in the youngest in our house. Sometimes that question to the oldest elicits an eye roll and just a shaking of the head. But that question, for me, is a brilliant question, because sometimes it gets me answers that I didn't even know I wanted. Sometimes it gets confessions. Sometimes it gets the boys into a little bit of trouble, and I just find that amusing. But that's a common question, not just in my house, but probably in a lot of people's houses, probably in a lot of places, and it's a common question in our church. People have asked, we've gone through a year of transition, and people have been asking for a long time, what's next? I'm sure some of you have wondered that, who you've been with us this past year, even longer than that. You've kind of asked that question of what's next. Maybe you ask Joey, or maybe you're asking other leaders down there, what's next for Church at the Bar? What's next for Christ Church? Right? Because once the decision was made and Trevor moved on, we were wondering, okay, what's going to happen next? What are we going to do? And so today is one of those days where we begin to unpack a little bit and kind of lay out some of the vision for what's next for Christ Church, what's next for Church at the Bar. And how we answer that question determines where we're moving, where we're going together. And so that question is interesting, because what we're going to look at today in the book of Acts, the question is very similar to what Jesus was asked. And so if you have your Bibles, open them to Acts chapter 1. We're just going to be in verses 6 through 8, but Acts chapter 1, verses 6 through 8, and this is what we read. So when the apostles were with Jesus, they kept asking him, Lord, has the time come for you to free Israel and restore our kingdom? They wanted to know if he was going to do this Messiah stuff. He replied, the Father alone has the authority to set those dates and times, and they are not for you to know. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. So we're going to unpack that a little bit more, but I want to stop right here, and I want to ask my first question to you this morning, and that is, what's the craziest question you've ever been asked? Think about all the questions you've ever been asked in your life. What is the craziest question someone has ever asked you? Take a few minutes, talk about this, and then we'll be back and we'll begin to unpack these 3 verses here in a few minutes. All right, Church of the Bar, welcome back. And let's unpack these verses we just read. So, setting the stage a little bit, Jesus, he's already been crucified and he's already raised from the dead. And he's come back to spend time with the apostles, and we know he's getting ready to leave them. We don't know for sure if they know that. I tend to believe they don't know everything that's going on, so they're asking him his questions of what's next, right? What's next for us? What's next for your ministry? What's next for everything you're doing? And his answer is fascinating because he answers the question, but he doesn't answer the question. He tells them basically, hey, this is above your pay grade. Guys, don't worry about this kingdom stuff. It's going to take care of itself, and God's going to determine that. What I need you to worry about is I need you to worry about being my witnesses everywhere you go. Now, I think the reason they ask that question is, have you ever heard the saying from someone, I see better than I hear? I think that describes them. They want to see what's next. They wanted something that was visible, something that made sense. If you remember when Jesus was teaching them and throughout his ministry, they had a hard time grasping what he was talking about. And in some ways, it didn't come into a clear picture or focus until they saw him crucified and then raised from the dead. But they needed to see that. Even Thomas, he needed to see that Jesus, he was indeed, that this was Jesus who was on the cross before he'd believe it. And so with this kingdom, they're asking that question because they want something visible. They wanted freedom from Rome. They wanted him to establish his rule. And so they wanted a kingdom that looked like what they had once had, going back in the glory days of King David and King Solomon. But Jesus was different. See, they wanted something visible. Jesus wanted something that was viable, something that was worthwhile and sustainable. Reminded of a conversation that Jesus had before he was crucified. We find it in Luke chapter 17, verses 20 through 21. And it says that once on being asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, Jesus replied, the coming of the kingdom of God is not something that can be observed. Nor will people say, here it is or there it is, because the kingdom of God is in your midst. This is an interesting answer because Jesus is telling them, guys, if you would see me for who I really am, you would understand the answer to this question. You would understand the kingdom of God is in your midst. We also know that from the Bible that the kingdom of God it comes in stages, that ultimately when Jesus returns, he's going to usher in his kingdom, and that is going to be extremely visible. You're not going to miss it. But there's also a sense we see from the Bible that the kingdom of God is, it's not a physical kingdom, it's a spiritual kingdom. It's not an external kingdom, it's an internal kingdom that we have the privilege, we have the benefit to be a part of that kingdom, that the indwelling of the Holy Spirit signifies that we're a part of that kingdom. Jesus is telling them, and in this section in Acts, is what he's saying is that you are going to build my kingdom by sharing about me, by telling people about me. That the plan is that his kingdom would grow one person at a time. When a person decides to change the direction of stop living life for themselves and live it for Jesus, essentially you're ushered into the kingdom. That it grows through the telling and retelling of who Jesus is and what he does. And it would be built in a way that would contradict the kingdoms and the empires that we see in the world. Like I said, Jesus wasn't interested in something that was visible. He's interested in something that was viable, something that would last. And so this brings up a great question. The Pharisees, they struggled throughout his entire ministry to see who Jesus was and to see God working in their midst. They prided themselves as men who loved God, who spent time with God, who could see what God was doing. Yet when we read through the Gospels, we see so often, and even in the beginning of the church era, we see so often where they just missed what God was doing in their midst, in their presence. And so our second question is along those same lines, and that is, why do you think people, like you and me, why do we struggle at times to see God working in our midst, right? Why do people struggle to see what God is doing in their lives so often? Take a few minutes, talk about this question, and then we'll be back to continue on. All right, everyone, we're back. And what's interesting about that question of we saw it with the Pharisees, they struggled to see it, and it hadn't changed, right? People still sometimes struggle to see God working in their midst. And so as we begin to unpack what we're talking about today of what's next, and Jesus said, when he was basically asked what's next, he said, you're going to be my witnesses in all these places. When we talk about what's next for our church, we're still going to be a church that loves God and loves people. That is foundational to who we are and what we do. It doesn't matter if you're a part of our church online. It doesn't matter if you're a part of our church at the Mason campus. It doesn't matter if you're a part of our church through Church at the Bar. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a part of our church through the different various avenues and ways moving forward. Whether it's online or at the bar or on the Mason campus, we're going to be about loving God and loving people. That's what we were founded on. That's what the reason behind starting it. And it still is true today. It doesn't matter who is preaching, doesn't matter who is leading, doesn't matter who the staff is, doesn't matter who the elders are. Christ Church is always going to be a church that first and foremost loves God and loves people. Now, how we do that, the ways in which we carry that out, those things will change, and they have to change in order for us to be as effective as possible. But the emphasis, the main point, the driving point of it doesn't change. We go back to Acts in verse 8, and Jesus says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you. And you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And I want you to think for a moment here, we go back to this verse, that what's happening here is as Jesus is getting ready to leave, because after he gives them these instructions, he ascends into heaven, he leaves. They're going to have the privilege to be his witnesses everywhere they went. And when we hear this term witness, I want you to think about a courtroom, a court setting. And whenever there's a big case in court, one of the most important days, one of the most important day or days is when they're going to have testimony, but not just any testimony, eyewitness testimony. That testimony always carries a bunch of weight. And so in this scenario, the apostles, they're going to be sharing eyewitness testimony to people that they meet, that they come across, that they encounter as they go throughout the rest of their lives. They're going to share eyewitness testimony of who Jesus is, what Jesus did, and what Jesus can be to them. And this process would continue to repeat itself. And it has repeated itself throughout history, all the way up until where we find ourselves today. Now, some of you may say, well, wait a minute, Brad. We don't have the same eyewitness testimony to share that the apostles did. And you are right to some extent. But we may not have visibly seen Jesus in the flesh doing what he did, but we have our own eyewitness testimony of what Jesus has done in our lives, what he's done within our families, what he's done for us or within our churches. You all at the bar have witnessed what Jesus has done in each other's lives. You've witnessed what he's done within the ministry at Church at the Bar. You've had baptisms. You've had people on mission trips. You've had testimonies. You've had people that have walked through some hellacious times, and you've seen how Christ has worked through you and worked in these situations since you began. And so in some regards, even though we don't have the eyewitness of Jesus in the flesh, all of us have a story or stories or testimonies to share with people about how Jesus has changed our lives, how he's changed us, how he's done things in our lives and in our families that have helped us not only grow closer to him, but grow closer with our spouse or with our kids, or that have improved the dynamics of life. And what we sometimes miss is it's those, at times can be little things, but it's those moments, it's those changes that Jesus brought into our lives that people are looking for those same things. See, at the end of the day, life in some ways isn't that complicated, right? Couples want to have better marriages. Parents want to be better parents. Children want to have a better relationship with their parents. People want to have a better relationship with God. They want to have a better understanding of God. We want more peace. We want more unity. We want more harmony in our lives. And the truth is that for many of us, the closer we get to Jesus, the more those things happen in our lives. And people want to know why. They want to know how. They want us to share those things. See, we go back to verse 8, and they're to be their witnesses in Jerusalem, but they weren't going to stay there. As I bring things back to our church, what's interesting for us is that we've spent a lot of time the past year kind of in our Jerusalem, where we wanted to get things right, where we wanted to create the opportunity for healing to take place. There was a lot of surprise and shock when news came a year ago that there's going to be a change here at Christ Church. I know some of you were surprised by it. Some of you were shocked. Some of you thought, I don't know how I'm going to continue on to do this. Because Trevor had a lot of great relationships with people. And anytime you go through a transition in your church, especially with who the preacher is, it creates a lot of questions. It creates can create a little bit of chaos, and it forces us to say, man, what am I doing? And for some people, they made the decision that I need to find a new church. I need to find something that's better for me. For some of you, you made the decision that I'm going to hang in here and see what happens, and you're still with us today. For others, you didn't even know all this stuff was going on, and you came into the mix a little later on, and you're like, man, this is my place. I want to be a part of Church at the Bar. And so wherever you find yourselves at today, we spent a lot of time focusing on our Jerusalems, but as Jesus says here, we can't just stay there. And so if we're going to be Christ's followers, which I think we want to be, and we're going to follow out kind of his orders for us, and we're going to be a place that whether it's the Mason campus online, at Church at the Bar, that loves God and loves people, here's what it's going to look like for you and for me to be Christ followers in our communities. And I want to be clear on this. As we talk about some of these things, some may apply more to you, some may not. There's things that we're doing right now. There's things that you're doing at Church at the Bar throughout the year that happen in different seasons that are phenomenal. And what we're talking about doesn't mean we're getting rid of all these things. These are just things we're adding. And this is what is exciting to me, is this is just the beginning, right? This is just the beginning of stuff that we feel that as leadership here that God has said, hey, this is this hill I want you to take. This is what I want you to do. And so as we talk through these things, understand that we know that there's more that God has in store for us. But for right now, this is what we want to focus on. These are some things we want to be involved in, and we want you to be a part of as well. And so one of the things we're excited to announce is that at the beginning of October, we're starting, we're in a partnership with Joshua's Place right now, but we're going to be starting a food co-op up at the Mason campus. And Joshua's Place is a nonprofit organization located in South Lebanon with just a passion for helping those who have some significant needs and who need some help. And so we're excited that in our Mason community that we can be a place right now through this food co-op where we can minister to families in Mason that have these needs, and we're excited about the opportunity to help meet some of those needs. But not only are we going to do this food co-op, we're going to expand our ministries and our partnership with Joshua's Place and the Mason schools through helping with things such as food packs for the weekend. We're going to, over the next year, begin to get involved in one-on-one tutoring, helping students that need a little more attention, that need a little more individualized help to help them learn, to help them continue to grow academically. And we're excited about that partnership. We're going to host some special classes and have some special opportunities if you're interested in learning more about how you can be involved in serving in these types of ways in our communities. And there's going to be more information about that moving forward in the future. We have a developing relationship with Mason Elementary. And one of the things that they've asked us to do this year is if we would be willing to stock and keep stocked their staff break room. It's kind of like their place where teachers can go and grab a cup of coffee or grab a snack, and we value what they bring to our community. We want to help them by keeping this stocked and letting them know, hey, we care about you. There's also times throughout the year where we will show up at the school and there's 4 or 5 carts, and we load these things up with Diet Cokes and waters, Gatorades, Snickers, M&Ms, cheese crackers, granola bars, a bunch of different things. You just go from classroom to classroom, offering them a snack and just letting them know, hey, we appreciate what you're doing with our kids. We appreciate the impact you're making in our community. And there's going to be opportunities for you to be a part of that as well. We're excited about that. You know that recently, some of you at Church of the Bar, you were on our mission trip that Alan led down to the Dominican Republic. And one of the neighborhoods you went to, and we went to, was the neighborhood of Garabo. And what was awesome is that trip into Garabo was the first time an American missionary team had ever entered into that village. And we're excited to announce that we're partnering with Go Ministries to be a part of adopting that village. And so when Christ Church goes on trips there, Garabo is going to be a place we go to because we're adopting that village. And we're excited about being able to work with the pastor and his wife down there to reach more people with the message of Jesus. I'm also asking today that you begin to pray and dream with us. You know, up at the Mason campus, we sit on one of the best pieces of property in Mason. And we know that as we sit here, we want to make sure that we as the church, like I said, whether you're online at the Mason campus or Church of the Bar campus, we want to make sure we're taking and using God's resources for the best and most efficient way possible. And so we're beginning to pray and dream, God, how can you use the building, how can you use this property to reach more people with the message that your son wants people to hear? And so I want to invite you today to be a part of that, to begin to pray, to begin to dream. And if you have ideas or suggestions or thoughts of, hey, this is something we can do, or has the church ever thought about doing this, share them with Joey. Reach out to Alan Baumline, our executive pastor. Share them with me. Contact any of our elders and say, here's something I've been praying or dreaming about, because wouldn't it be awesome if online at the bar at the Mason campus, we began to pray together and dream together, and we started sharing these ideas, and we're sharing, we're on the same page. And it's just come through prayer and through this dreaming of what God can do. We're excited about what God is doing here and what he's going to continue to do. And so we want you to be excited with that as well. And I don't want to miss this, right? We've talked a lot about going out into our communities and being a presence here. And we're a part of communities like the Mason community, or maybe you're in a community in Westchester, maybe you're in a community in Mainville or South Lebanon or Morrow, wherever it's at. But there's also communities, even on a smaller scale, our own communities with people or families. And I want to encourage you, even in those communities, to be intentional with the people in your communities about who Jesus is and what he's done in your life. And what a great opportunity we have as we head into the fall to invite people to be a part of what's going on. Be bold to invite people to join you at Church of the Bar, to experience what you've experienced. Because I'm telling you, if you get them there, you get people with you to come to the bar, we will make sure that they hear about Jesus, that they hear about how much he loves them, about how he has a plan for them, and how he wants the best for them. You get them there, we will get Jesus to them. And so we talked a lot about engagement, right? Engaging on a global level with Go Ministries in a place like Garabo. We've talked about engaging with our schools, engaging with Joshua's place, engaging in your personal community. So logically brings us to a third question. What is it that keeps us from engaging in our communities? Think about that. What is it that keeps you from engaging in the community and the communities you find yourself in? Take a few minutes, talk about this, and then we'll be back to wrap things up and get to our last question today. All right, Church of the Bar, welcome back. And as we wrap things up today, I want to close with this story. I'm going to read to you from Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 48. If you want to follow along, Luke chapter 8, we're going to start in verse 40. And I just want to end with this story today. Verse 40 says, "On the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. Then a man named Jairus, a leader of the local synagogue, came and fell at his feet, pleading with him to come home with him. His only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying, and as Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by crowds." Now, I want you to picture this like he's just packed. Like there's people, it's hard to even move. He's just surrounded by all these people, and he's trying to move through this crowd. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. So coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe, and immediately the bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. And everyone denied it. And Peter said, "Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you." And so what that term pressing up against describes is that people are almost being crushed. There were so many people in this place. And Peter's almost saying, he's like, "Master, you're surrounded by all these people. How are you going to figure out, or how are you going to know if someone touched you? Everyone's just on top of each other, like you can't even move in there." But Jesus said, "Someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me." And when the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And so I share this story because we see this amazing situation unfold. That this woman, who for 12 years couldn't be cured, couldn't find the healing she needed, believed that if she could get close enough to Jesus, she didn't even need to talk to Jesus. If she could get close enough to him and just reach out and touch him, reach out and touch the fringe of his robe, that she would be healed. And sure enough, she fought her way through the crowd to get close enough and just barely touched his robe, and she was healed. And the reason I love this story, I want to end with this story today, is I believe that in the same way, when we, you and me, when we get into community, when we give of ourselves, we become funnels of God's grace. We become dispensers of God's love. That there are times we may not even need to say anything. There's times where we may not do anything spectacular, but the intentionality of you and me getting into the community, meeting new people, sharing with people we've known for a long time, just being present in our communities and serving our communities opens up the doors for God to work through us and for God to provide that spiritual healing that so many people today need. And sometimes the remarkability of God is that God doesn't need us to say things. God doesn't need us to teach or to lecture. What God needs is for people that are willing to go out into their Judeas and Samarias to the ends of the earth and be the people that he can funnel his grace, he can funnel his love, he can funnel his forgiveness, he can funnel his hope, he can funnel his purpose through. And so sometimes when you and me, when we just show up and say, "God, use me however you want," just like Jesus brought healing to this woman by just being close enough to reach out, I think when we go out, we open the door for God to bring what people need to them, because we're willing not just to stay in Jerusalem, but to get out and to go into Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. So I want to go back to this story. And as we end today, the last question is, this lady believed that if she could touch Jesus, just his robe, that she would be healed. But, interesting question here. Do you think the lady who, her faith, that's what her faith was, that if she could touch him, if she could get close enough, she'd be healed. Do you think the lady would have been healed had she not touched his robe? Last question of the day. Answer that question, right? Spend the next couple minutes. Would she have been healed? Do you think she would have been healed had she not touched Jesus' robe? Talk about that, and then we'll be back to wrap things up. All right, hey, we're back and we're going to wrap things up today. And I want to just reiterate that I'm excited. I know our staff, our leadership, we're excited about what's next at Christ Church. Not just the Mason campus, but our Church of the Bar online. We're excited about what's next, and I hope you're excited about that too. And I want you to be a part of what's next. I want you to be a part of what we believe God is doing, what God is stirring up in our church. And I'm going to ask again that you'll join me just in praying for our different campuses, our online campus, our Church of the Bar campus, our Mason campus. Praying that God will continue to provide clarity to our leadership, praying for the opportunities that God's going to bring our way, and praying that we will be the presence in our different communities that He wants us and needs us to be. And so if you're hearing some of this today and you're thinking, I want more information, talk to Joey, right? You can reach out to me, jump on our website. You can find contact information there. But if you've got questions, if you want to be a part of some of the things that we talked about today, say, how do I get more involved in that? Feel free to ask questions and be a part of it. I am so excited about what God has been doing at Church of the Bar. I'm excited. It seems like every weekend I hear from Joey something new, whether it's a conversation that's unlocks some ideas or thoughts in someone's mind, or it's a new person checking things out, or it's people taking that next step forward. I am so excited for what God's done, but I'm really excited for what the future holds. And I think that none of us have a clue or an idea or an understanding of what God is planning to do through our ministries at Christ Church, whether it's at the bar, whether it's online, whether it's at our Mason campus. But I do know this, that He wants us to be a part of what He's doing. I hope you do too. So let me pray for you today, turn things back over to the team down there, and let's just continue to celebrate what God is doing in our lives and in our churches and in our different campuses. Let's pray. Father, we thank You for how much You love us. We thank You for just the ideas and the excitement about what's next. Father, I just want to ask that You continue to provide us with clarity. Father, that You continue to provide us with opportunities to serve You, and that, Father, we have the wisdom and the vision to see those things that You have in front of us. Father, I thank You for everyone today at Church of the Bar. I thank You for the families represented there. And I just ask that you bring blessings to them, that, Father, those that they have things going on that they may not be sharing, that others may not know about, but You know about, Father. I ask that You work in those situations, provide peace where it's needed, comfort where it's needed, and provide the love and encouragement where it's needed as well. We thank You for Jesus, and it's in His name we pray. Amen.